Prabhu, how do I share my screen, Prabhu?
Prabhuji, there is, I already gave you sharing permissions. There should be in the middle of the screen, there's a green share screen button, Prabhu.
Okay, Prabhu, I found it, Prabhu.
I'll also make you co-host.
Start with a small kirtan and then we get into the.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brijana Ranjana Yamunavanatirachari Yashodanandana Brijana Ranjana Yamunavanatirachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna to all devotees, Dandavat Pranam. My humble obeisances to all of you. I want to first of all start by thanking Sri Lilananda Prabhu for giving me this opportunity to have this service today, and also thank all the senior devotees, Praveen Prabhu, Subbarao Prabhu, Kitchen Prabhu, and all other senior devotees on the call for your blessings and for your inspiration. We'll start today by, as usual, by the prayer seeking permission from the Parampara to discuss the spiritual subjects. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurum Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Pada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitantam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Please recite after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudiraye.
Nashtaprayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavate uttame shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki krishnaya vasudevaya devaki nandanaya cha nanda gopa kumaraya govindaya namo namah namah pankajanaಭಾಯ namah pankajamaline namah pankajanetraya namaste pankajangre
Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Premaya Pradayate
Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya
Namne Gauratvishe Namaha Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmana Hitaya Cha Jagaddhitaya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate te giram yat pipatamaham vande Shri Gurum Dhinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Om Apavitra Pavitro Va Sarvavastam Kato Piva Yasmaret Pundari Kanksham Sarvaya Abhyantaram Suchi Shri Vishnu Shri Vishnu Shri Krishna, the devotees once again. Today we'll be reading Srimad Bhagavatam, and Mataji will help me in this class reading the purports. Today's class we will be covering Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 14. And the topic is the pregnancy of Diti in the evening. And as you all have heard yesterday, in Lilananda Prabhu's class, he covered the appearance of Lord Varaha. And Vidura, this is the conversation now happening between Maitreya and Vidura. And Maitreya is very, very inquisitive to know more about the Lord. And after hearing about the Varadev's appearance in the period of Swayambhuva Manu, so with the Varaha Dev that appears is the Shvetavaraha Varaha, the white boar. Vidura is still very curious and he still wants to know more. So he inquires about the Nilavara, and that sets the conversation going between Maitreya Muni and Vidura, because now Maitreya has to provide a little bit more of context about Nilavara, and Vidura is of course very curious to know more about Hiranyakashipu and what happens there. So to provide that context, Maitreya Muni needs to provide that context, and therefore he goes back in time a bit to the pregnancy of Diti, who's the wife of sage Kashyapa Muni's wife, and she's the daughter of Daksha. So we'll start today with this, and it's a fairly straightforward chapter, Matajis and Prabhujis. It's a simple chapter. It has 51 verses, but the purports are not very long. And so I thought today that we'll cover the full chapter, and we'll also go through the purports, because these are all very, very powerful purports for all of us who are in the Grihastha ashram. This chapter, according to at least my reflection, is a very, very important for all practicing grahasthas, and is provides very, very useful insights and opportunities for us to reflect on what to do and how to conduct ourselves as our grahasthas in our daily life also. I will also encourage all of you to make notes. I was reading the purport of Srila Prabhupada from the first canto, I think so, it's the 4th chapter, the first verse, wherein Srila Prabhupada talks about realization. And he mentions that, just listening is not enough or reading is not enough. Realization is very, very important. What is your personal realization from today's class is going to be very, very important. And these can be a few realizations also. And at the end of the class, we'll spend a few minutes and I will request all the devotees who are there on this class to please share your realizations, 3 or 4 realizations. So please maybe take a pen and paper. And as we go and proceed through this class, please jot down your self-realizations for today and do share that with all of us and help us also progress in our Krishna conscious journey. We'll begin with the class now. So I will be reading through Veda base only. So I've actually, what I've done, and this is the approach actually you can also do is, when I go to Veda base, I use this. In Chrome, there's an option to highlight. I highlight, and then I create a PDF of my annotated reading from the chapter. This becomes also an easy way you can store it in your computer. So I'll recite the sloka and I'll request Mataji to read the purport wherever there is, the translation and the purport. Pregnancy of Diti in the evening, text 1. Sri Shuka Vacha Nishamya Kaushara Vinopavarnitam Hare Katham Karana Sukaratmanaha Punasapaprichatam Udyatanjalir Nachat Tripto Vidurodhrita Vrataha.
Translation. Sukadeva Goswami said, after hearing from the great sage Maitreya about the Lord's incarnation as Varaha, Vidura, who had taken a vow, begged him with folded hands to please narrate further transcendental activities of the Lord, since he, Vidura, did not yet feel satisfied.
Yes. So I think what we see over here is some qualities about the pure devotee. So you see here that Vidura has heard about the Lord's incarnation as Varaha. And what is his state of mind there? He is begging with folded hands. He's saying, Maitreya Muni, please narrate further the transcendental activities of the Lord, because he is not feeling satisfied. If we compare that to ourselves today in this mundane world and in our material lives, we get disinterested very, very fast. Even whilst we are listening to a class also, there are many times wherein our mind deviates. And sometimes we are not able to even go beyond an hour. Over here, he has listened to hours of lecture from Maitreya Muni, but still his state of mind is still at the lotus feet of the Lord, and he's not able to take it out from there. And he's begging. That nectar is so sweet for him. He's like an addict here. It's like, if you may use it's a very, I would say it's not the right analogy, but we see, drug addicts, and we have seen them in movies, when the addicted pleading and saying, please give me this, please give me this. That's the kind of addiction and taste he has for hearing about the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. And he's saying, I'm not satisfied, give me more. Then Vidura further says, Vidura Uvacha Tenaiva tu Muni Shrestha Harina Yagnamurtina Adidaityo Hiranyaksho Hata Itya Anushruma.
Sri Vidura said, O chief amongst the great sages, I have heard by disciplic succession that Hiranyaksha, the original demon, was slain by the same form of sacrifices, the personality of Godhead, Lord, bore. In both millenniums, there was a boar incarnation of the, as referred to previously, the boar incarnation was manifested in 2 millenniums, namely Swayambhuva and Chakshusha. In both millenniums, there was a boar incarnation of the Lord. But in the Swayambhu millennium, he lifted the earth from within the water of the universe, whereas in the Chakshushu millennium, he killed the first demon, Hiranyaksha. In the Swayambhu millennium, he assumed the color white, and in the Chakshushu millennium, he assumed the color red. Vidura had already heard about one of them, and he proposed to hear about the other. The two different boar incarnations described are the one supreme personality of Godhead.
Thank you, Mataji. So I think, as what I have said earlier, Vidura heard about the first incarnation in the Swayambhavu Manu period, which is the white boar, the Shvetavaraha incarnation. And then he's inquiring about the Nilavara or the Raktavaraha, the red boar incarnation of the Lord. We'll continue. Next 3. Tasya chodarata kshaunим swadamshtragred leelaya daityarajasya cha brahman tasmadhetor abhunmridah.
What was the reason, O Brahmana, for the fight between the demon king and the Lord boar, while the Lord was lifting the earth as his pastime?
So here again, we are seeing the quality of Vidura of inquisitiveness. He's inquiring. What was the reason? We'll continue. It says, Shraddadhanaya bhaktaya brohita janma vistaram rishena tripyati manaha param kautuhalam hime.
My mind has become very inquisitive, and therefore I am not satisfied with hearing the narration of the Lord's appearance. Please, therefore, speak more and more to a devotee who is faithful.
Devotee who is faithful. It's very important. Mataji, please read the purport.
One who is actually faithful and inquisitive is qualified to hear the transcendental pastimes of the appearance and disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vidura was a suitable candidate to receive such transcendental messages.
Hare Krishna. So here we are seeing two very, very important qualities are being called out. Faithful and inquisitive. So the Shraddha is there, but the inquisitiveness is also there. So he's saying one who is actually faithful and inquisitive to hear the transcendental pastimes of appearance and disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Vidura was a suitable candidate to receive such transcendental messages. We'll continue. Maitreyo vacha sadhu vira tvaya prishtam avatara katham hare yatvam prichasi martyanam mrityupasha vishatanam tanim.
Translation. The great sage Maitreya said, O warrior, the inquiry made by you is just befitting a devotee because it concerns the incarnation of the personality of Godhead. He is the source of liberation from the chain of birth and death for all those who are otherwise destined to die. Purport. The great sage Maitreya addressed Vidura as a warrior not only because Vidura belonged to the Kuru family, but because he was anxious to hear about the chivalrous activities of the Lord in his incarnations of Varaha and Narasimha. Because the inquiries concerned the Lord, they were perfectly befitting a devotee. A devotee has no taste for hearing anything mundane. There are many topics of mundane warfare, but a devotee is only inclined to hear them. The topics of the warfare in which the Lord engages do not concern the war of death, but the war against the chain of Maya, which obliges one to accept repeated birth and death. In other words, one who takes delight in hearing the war topics of the Lord is relieved from the chains of birth and death. foolish people are suspicious of Krishna's taking part in the battle of Kurukshetra, not knowing that his taking part ensured liberation for all who were present on the battlefield. It is said by Bhishma Deva that all who were present on the battlefield of Kurukshetra attained their original spiritual existence after death. Therefore, hearing the war topics of the Lord is as good as any other devotional service.
Hare Krishna. So here we are hearing that, first of all, Maitreya is addressing Vidura as warrior. He's saying, oh warrior. So why did Maitreya Muni address Vidura as a warrior? So there are two reasons. Of course, and Prabhupada is calling that out. He's saying that Vidura belonged to the Kuru family. So he was a Kaurava, Kshatriya, and therefore a warrior. But more importantly, because he was anxious to hear about the chivalrous activities of the Lord in his incarnations of Varaha and Narasimha. And in the last line, Prabhupada also says, hearing about the war topics of the Lord is as good as any other devotional service. So the rasa might be different, but more importantly, I think we need to keep in mind is that tattva is always the same. Anything concerning the Lord is always on the absolute platform. And also, the Lord is the ultimate warrior, right? And here, Vidura as a devotee is also engaged in the war against this chain of Maya. So Lord's engages do not concern war of death, but the war against the chain of Maya, which obliges one to accept repeated birth and death. In other words, one who delights in hearing the war topics of the Lord is relieved from the chains of birth and death. And we also saw in the battle of Kurukshetra, all the people who were slain just by simply dying in the presence of Krishna attained liberation. Text 6. Yayotana putro munina gitayarbhakah mrityo kritvaiva murdhyangrim aaruroho hare padam.
Translation. By hearing these topics from the sage Narada, the son of King Uttanapada Dhruva was enlightened regarding the personality of Godhead, and he ascended to the abode of the Lord, placing his feet over the head of bed. Purport. While quitting his body, Maharaj Dhruva, the son of King Uttanapada, was attended by personalities like Sunanda and others who received him in the kingdom of God. He left this world at an early age as a young boy, although he had attained the throne of his father and had several children of his own. Because he was due to quit this world, death was waiting for him. He did not care for death. However, and even with his present body, he boarded a spiritual airplane and went directly to the planet of Vishnu because of his association with the great sage Narada, who had spoken to him the narration of the pastimes of the Lord.
Hare Krishna. So here, Maitreya Muni is giving the proof also. So in verses 5 to 7, we are seeing Maitreya first starts by congratulating Vidura. He calls him a warrior. And then he tells that Harikatha gives liberation. And then he goes on to give the proof. He talks about Dhruva Maharaj, about how Dhruva Maharaj heard of these topics by Narada, and he was enlightened, and he finally ascended to the Lord's abode by placing his feet over the head of death, Yama himself. So this is proof being given. And in the next verse of text 7, here we see about how the history is described by Brahma. Athatrapi hahasoyam shruto me varnitah pura brahmana deva devena devanam anuprichatam.
Translation. This history of the fight between the Lord as a boar and the demon Hiranyaksha was heard by me in a year long ago as it was described by the foremost of the demigods, Brahma, when he was questioned by the other demigods.
So here Brahma is describing the history of the fight between the Lord as a boar and the demon Hiranyaksha. And now Maitreya will move on in text 8 to describe the events that led to the demigods to approach Brahma. So what were those events that happened? So essentially, how did Hiranyaksha come and what did he do? And therefore the demigods went to Brahma and sought his intervention, saying, Brahma, please do something, call the Supreme Personality of Godhead to intervene. So from text 8 to text 15, we will see now the story pans to Diti and Kashyapa Muni, and how Diti now approaches Kashyapa Muni for union. Text 8. Ditir Dakshayani Shattar Maricham Kashyapam Patim Apatya Kama Chakame Sandhyayam Hrichayardita.
Translation. Diti, daughter of Daksha, being afflicted with sex desire, begged her husband Kashyapa, the son of Marichi, to have intercourse with her in the evening in order to beget a child.
So here Diti is approaching Kashyapa Muni at an inappropriate time because she is afflicted by lust and a desire for a child. So you see that in order to beget a child, and she is approaching Kashyapa, the son of Marichi. Ishtvagni Jivam Payasa Purusham Yajusham Patim Nimlochatya Arkashashinam Agnya Agare Samahitam.
Translation. The sun was setting, the sage was sitting in trance after offering oblations to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, whose tongue is the sacrificial fire. Fire is considered to be the tongue of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, and oblations of grains and clarified butter offered to the fire are thus accepted by him. This is the principle of all sacrifices, of which Lord Vishnu is the master. In other words, the satisfaction of Lord Vishnu includes the satisfaction of all demigods and other living beings.
Yes, that is the principle of all sacrifices, of which Lord Vishnu is the master, and satisfaction of Vishnu includes the satisfaction of all demigods and all other living beings, all other jivas also. So when you water the root, all the leaves, all the branches, the entire tree gets nourished, and we are all part of that tree. Text 10. Now, Diti will reason with Kashyapa about the union. So she is, first of all, she is approaching Kashyapa Muni at an inappropriate time. It's sunset time. But now she has to reason why she wants to have a union. Ditira vacha eshamam tvatkrite vidvan kama ata sa sharasanaha dunoti dinam vikramya rambham iva matangajaha.
Translation. In that place, the beautiful Diti expressed her desire. O learned one, Cupid is taking his arrows and distressing me forcibly as a mad elephant troubles a banana tree. Beautiful Diti, seeing her husband absorbed in trance, began to speak loudly, not attempting to attract him by bodily expressions. She frankly said that her whole body was distressed by sex desire because of her husband's presence, that just as a banana tree is troubled by a mad elephant. It was not natural for her to agitate her husband when he was in trance, but she could not control her strong sexual appetite. Her sex desire was like a mad elephant, and therefore it was the prime duty of her husband to give her all protection by fulfilling her desire.
So she is saying that Cupid, lust, is torturing me, right? And she compares Cupid to a mad elephant troubling a banana tree. But what is interesting over here is the mindset. And I'm sure, I can at least compare this mindset, I can relate to this mindset. When we are doing something that is not right, or when we are having done something not right, we end up trying to justify it also. So here the blame is being put on Cupid. Cupid taking his arrows and distressing me forcibly. While the desire is inside, the blame is being put on Cupid, right? We'll move to text 11. Tad bhavan manayam sapatninam samriddhibhi prajavatinam bhadram te mayang amaya yungtam anugraham.
Therefore, you should be kind towards me by showing me complete mercy. I desire to have sons, and am much distressed by seeing the opulence of my co-wives. By performing this act, you will become happy. In Bhagavad Gita, sexual intercourse for begetting children is accepted as righteous. A person sexually inclined for simple sense gratification, however, is unrighteous. In Diti's appeal to her husband for sex, it was not exactly that she was afflicted by sex desires, but she desired sons. Since she had no sons, she felt poorer than her co-wives. Therefore, Kashyapa was supposed to satisfy his bona fide wife.
So here again, the justification continues, and it goes on to say, just like a child, when a child does not get something, the child compares that, look here, somebody else has got something, therefore I need it. And here Diti is similarly saying that you should be kind towards me by showing me complete mercy. And she says, I desire to have sons. And this is a very, very natural desire for a parent, for a mother, or to be mother, to have children. And she says that she's very distressed because she sees the opulence of the co-wives. So her sisters are also married and they have children. She doesn't have children. And that sense that, look here, I am bereft while others have something else, is bothering her. And that leads to the desire, that leads to the lust. Text 12. Bhartrarya torumananam lokan avishate yashah patir bhavad vidho yasam prajaya nanujayate.
Translation: a woman is honored in the world by the benediction of her husband, and a husband like you will become famous by having children because you are meant for expansion of living entities. Purport: according to Rishabdeva, one should not become a father or mother unless one is confident that he can beget children whom he can deliver from the clutches of birth and death. Human life is the only opportunity to get out of the material scene, which is full of the miseries of birth, death, old age, and diseases. Every human being should be given the opportunity to take advantage of this human form of life, and a father like Kashyapa is supposed to beget good children for the purpose of liberation.
Yes, so if you have qualified children, right, their fame usually passes on to their parents also. So that's why parents want to have good children and parents want to have good qualified children. And it's, as parents, it is our duty also to take them on the right path. Our primary duty is to ensure that we beget good children, but also we help liberate them. So the other day I was sitting at the dining table and I was talking to my daughter. Right, and she asked me, she told me, Appa, why are you telling me this? Why are you telling me that? And I had to tell her, it's my duty to tell you that if I feel that, you're not doing something right, I will have to tell you to get you onto the right track. So it is our primary responsibility that our children also get onto this path of Krishna consciousness and get liberated. Text 13. Pura pita no bhagavan Daksho duhitra vatsalah tam vrinita varam vatsa ityapricchata na pratak.
Translation: In days long ago, our father, the most opulent Daksha, who was affectionate to his daughters, asked each of us separately whom we would prefer to select as our husband. Purport: It appears from this verse that free selection of a husband was allowed by the father, but not by free association. The daughters were asked separately to submit the selection of a husband who was famous for his acts and personality. The ultimate selection depended on the choice of the father.
So if you see here, Prabhuji and Mataji, it's written, it appears that free selection of husband was allowed, but not by free association. So daughters were allowed to select whom they would like to get married to, but this was not through free association, right? So, and also over here, Diti is telling that she was attracted to Kashyapa Muni even before her marriage. So when her father asked her for the preference of a husband. We move on to text 14. Saviditvatvatmajanam puno bhavam santana bhavanah trayodashada dadat tasham yaste shilam anuvratah.
Translation: Our well-wishing father Daksha, after knowing our intentions, handed over 13 of his daughters unto you, and since then we have all been faithful. Purport: Generally, the daughters were too shy to express their options before their father, but the father would accept the daughter's intentions through someone else, such as a grandmother to whom the grandchildren had free access. King Daksha collected the opinion of his daughters and thus handed over 13 daughters to Kashyapa. Each one of the Diti's sisters was a mother of children. Therefore, since she was equally faithful to the same husband, why should she remain without children?
Yeah, so she's saying that all of us were equally faithful to you. Why should she be treated differently, and why should she remain without children? Prabhupada in his purports also is sharing that about how it was during those days of time wherein daughters would not, of course, while they were allowed free to select, they were not they were also were shy. They would not express their opinions freely with their parents, to their father. And as we also are familiar, grandparents are all very, very close to their grandchildren. And it is usually through the grandparents that the parents come to know about their children's preferences or anything that is bothering them. The secrets usually come up to the parents, or the problems that need to get solved to the parents from the grandparents. Text 15. Athame kuru kalyanam kamam kamalalochana arto pasarpanam bhuman amogham hi mahiyasi.
Translation: O lotus-eyed one, kindly bless me by fulfilling my desire. When someone in distress approaches a great person, his pleas would never go in vain. Purport:
Yeah.
Diti knew well that her request might be rejected because of untimely situation, but she pleaded that when there is an emergency or a distressful condition, there is no consideration of time or situation.
So this is an emergency situation for Diti. She is in a very distressed state of mind, and at that point of time, she has approached a person who's capable of solving the problem. And that's why, when a great person, they say, shouldn't neglect one who approaches him in distress. Text 16. Ititam veeramaricha kripanam bahubhashinim pratyahanunayan vacha pravriddhanangakam kakashmalam.
Translation: O hero, Vidura, Diti being thus afflicted by the contamination of lust and therefore poor and talkative was pacified by the son of Marichi in suitable words. Purport: when a man or woman is afflicted by the lust of sex desire, it is to be understood as sinful contamination. Kashyapa was engaged in his spiritual activities, but he did not have sufficient strength to refuse his wife, who was thus afflicted. He could have refused her with strong words expressing impossibility, but he was not as spiritually strong as Vidura. Vidura is addressed here as a hero because no one is stronger in self-control than a devotee of the Lord. It appears that Kashyapa was already inclined to have sexual enjoyment with his wife, and because he was not a strong man, he tried to dissuade her only with pacifying words.
Hare Krishna. So here, Vidura is being addressed by Maitri Muni as, O hero Vidura. Why is he addressing Vidura as a hero over here? So Prabhupada writes in the purport, he says, Vidura is addressed as a hero here because no one is stronger in self-control than a devotee of the Lord. We have seen numerous examples wherein, great sages have fallen down. Vishwamitra, for example, is a very often cited example of such fall down. And we have also seen on the other side how great devotees like Haridas Thakura, no matter what happened in terms of allurement, they were still able to maintain their calm composure and focus on the lotus feet of the Lord and stay away and with that self-control. So no one is as stronger in self-control than a devotee of the Lord. So that is why Vidura is being addressed as a hero over here. And Prabhupada also writes, it appears that Kashyapa was already inclined to engage. So that also indicates that, it sets apart the devotees of the Lord who are able to overcome such overtures of Maya by exercising their self-control because they are eternally focused only on the lotus feet of the Lord. Text 17. Now Kashyapa will now glorify his wife. It's interesting now because Kashyapa is now also trying to justify his action. He glorifies his wife from text 17 onwards. So text 17 onwards, we'll read now. Eshate aham vidhasyami priyam bhiru yadichasi tasya kamam na kuryat siddhistraivargiki yataha.
Translation: O afflicted one, I shall, for with gravity whatever desire is dear to you, or who else you is the source of the three perfections of liberation. Purport: the three perfections of liberation are religiosity, economic development, and sense gratification. For a conditioned soul, the wife is considered to be the source of liberation because she offers her service to the husband for his ultimate liberation. And there's not a disturbance coming.
Okay, now you can speak.
Okay. For a conditioned soul, the wife is considered to be the source of liberation because she offers a service to the husband for his ultimate liberation. Conditional material existence is based on sense gratification. And if someone has a good fortune to get a good wife, he is helped by the wife in all respects. If one is disturbed in this conditional life, he becomes more and more entangled in material contamination. A faithful wife is supposed to cooperate with her husband in fulfilling all material desires so that he can then become comfortable and execute spiritual activities for the perfection of life. If, however, the husband is progressive in spiritual advancement, the wife undoubtedly shares in his activities, and thus both the wife and the husband profit in spiritual perfection. It is essential, therefore, that girls as well as boys be trained to discharge spiritual duties so that at the time of cooperation, both will be benefited. The training of boy is brahmacharya and the training of the girl is chastity. A faithful wife and spiritually trained brahmachari are a good combination for the advancement of human mission.
Hare Krishna. Each and every purport in this chapter, at least for me when I was reading this chapter, I found that each and every purport, though short, is very, very impactful. And Prabhupada is extremely straight, extremely blunt in these purports. Some of these purports, you might find that they are quite blunt, but they have a very, very deep meaning. And again, here, Prabhuji's and Mataji's, I will encourage all of you to please read through these purports and reflect. Here, the three perfections of liberation are called out. They are Dharma, Artha, and Kama. And the wife's role and the husband's role is also being called out over here. When Prabhupada says a faithful wife is supposed to cooperate with her husband in fulfilling all material desires so that he can become comfortable and execute spiritual activities for the perfection of life. Now, if however the husband is progressive in spiritual advancement, the wife undoubtedly shares in his activities and thus both the wife and husband profit in spiritual perfection. So this also is telling us as householders what we should strive for, the right things. We should be striving for spiritual advancement. And when we strive for spiritual advancement, our family will also strive for spiritual advancement. This they call about this entire, you must have heard about this term called, it's infectious. It's like, so when one person in the house starts practicing something, then the other people in the house also start practicing and following it. So we move to the next verse, text 18. Sarvashraman Swashramena Kalatravan Vyasanarnavam Atyeti Jalayanair Yatharnavam.
Translation. As one can cross over the ocean with sea-going vessels, one can cross the dangerous situation of the material ocean. One can cross the dangerous situation of the material ocean by living with a wife. There are 4 social orders for cooperation in the endeavor for liberation from material existence. The orders of brahmacharya or pious student life, the household life with a wife, retired life, and renounced life. All depend for successful advancement on the householder who lives with a wife. This cooperation is essential for the proper functioning of the institution of the 4 social orders and the 4 spiritual orders of life. The Vedic Varnashrama system is generally known as the caste system. The man who lives with a wife has a great responsibility in maintaining the members of the other social orders, the brahmacharis, the vanaprasthas, and the sannyasis. Except for the grahasthas or the householders, everyone is supposed to engage in the spiritual advancement of life. And therefore, the brahmachari, the vanaprastha, and sannyasi have very little time to earn a livelihood. They therefore collect alms from the grahasthas and thus secure the bare necessities of life and cultivate spiritual understanding. By helping the other 3 sections of society cultivate spiritual values, the householder also makes advancement in spiritual life. Ultimately, every member of society automatically becomes spiritually advanced and easily crosses the ocean of nescience.
Hare Krishna. So here now we're talking about how the wife enables us to cross this material ocean, samsara, that we are in. But also here, more importantly in the purport, Prabhupada calls out the importance of the Varnashrama system. we as Grahasthas have a very, very important role to play for this Varnashrama system to sustain, to exist, and to thrive. In this Kali Yuga, of course, we do see this system collapsing because it's now being referred to as a caste system, which it is not. As many of you might know, when Prabhupada initially started the movement, the first he started targeting. He said, "My focus was to identify Brahmanas, and the reason for that was that Brahmanas are the source of knowledge. If a good Brahmana is not there, then a good Kshatriya will not be there, a good Vaishya will not be there, nor a good Shudra will be there. And because the other three Varnas were supposed to contribute, sustain the Brahmana was not supposed to go and fight or do a business to earn a living. His primary duty was to disseminate knowledge, spiritual knowledge, Vedic knowledge. And that would sustain the entire fabric of society. Similarly, the ashramas are equally very, very important. And each ashrama has got a unique importance. And Prabhupada here is calling out the importance of the Grahastha ashrama, Prabhujis and Matajis. So all of you, Prabhujis and Matajis on this call, we have an extremely important role to play here because the Grahasthas, in a way, sustain the fabric of the other three ashrams, without which this system will collapse. We'll move to text 19. Yamahur atmano hyardam shreyas kamasya manini yasyam swadhuram adhyasya umamsha charati vijvaraha.
Translation. O respected one, a wife is so helpful that she is called the better half of a man's body because of her sharing in all auspicious activities. A man can move without anxiety, entrusting all responsibilities to his wife. Purport. By the Vedic injunction, the wife is accepted as the better half of a man's body because she is supposed to be responsible for discharging half of the duties of the husband. A family man has a responsibility to perform 5 kinds of sacrifices called Pancha Yajna in order to get relief from all kinds of unavoidable sinful reaction incurred in the course of his affairs. When a man becomes qualitatively like the cats and dogs, he forgets his duties in cultivating spiritual values, and thus he accepts his wife as a sense gratificatory agency. When the wife is accepted as a sense gratificatory agency, personal beauty is the main consideration. As soon as there is a break in personal sense gratification, there is disruption or divorce. When wife aim at spiritual advancement by mutual cooperation, there is no consideration of personal beauty or the disruption of so-called love. In the material world, there is no question of love. Marriage is actually a duty performed in mutual cooperation as directed in the authoritative scriptures for spiritual advancement. Therefore, marriage is essential in order to avoid the life of cats and dogs who are not meant for spiritual enlightenment.
Hare Krishna. So our goal is spiritual advancement. And marriage is a vehicle for us to get to that goal. And when this marriage is performed, it's like actually a duty that is performed in mutual cooperation as directed in the authoritative scriptures. Spiritual advancement is certain. Here in this verse, again here, the wife is called the better half of man's body, Arthangani. Why is the wife called the better half? So when Brahma started the secondary creation, right? And Lilananda Prabhu actually shared a bit about this. He starts with first the 4 Kumaras, and they decline his request to continue the creation, and he gets angry, and then he creates Rudra, and from Rudra all the demoniac and ghostly personalities start coming. So then he tells Rudra that, look here, you go into penance, do tapas. And then he goes on with the creation after that. He first creates man, but then he realizes that man himself has got no desires. There is no desire at all, and he will not be able to continue this agenda of creation. So from the body of the man, the woman is created as a better half, who then helps the man in this creation. And that's why she's called the better half of the man. X2:20. Yamashriteendriyarratin durjayan itarashramai vayam jayema helabhir dasyun durgapatir yatha.
Translation. As a fort commander very easily conquers invading plunderers, by taking shelter of a wife, one can conquer the senses, which are unconquerable in the other social orders. Of the 4 orders of human society, the student brahmachari order, the householder or grahastha order, the retired or vanaprastha order, and the renounced or sannyasi order, the householder is on the safe side. The bodily senses are considered plunderers of the fort of the body. The wife is supposed to be the commander of the fort, and therefore, whenever there is an attack on the body by the senses, it is the wife who protects the body from being smashed. The sex demand is inevitable for everyone, but one who has fixed wife is saved from the onslaught of the sense enemies. A man who possesses a good wife does not create a disturbance in society by corrupting virgin girls. Without a fixed wife, a man becomes a debauchee of the first order and is a nuisance in society, unless he is a trained brahmachari, vanaprastha or sannyasi. Unless there is a rigid and systematic training of the brahmachari by the expert spiritual master, and unless the student is obedient, it is sure that the so-called brahmachari will fall prey to the attack of sex. There are so many instances of fall down, even for the great yogis like Vishwamitra. A grahastha is saved, however, because of his faithful wife. Sex life is a cause of material bondage, and therefore it is prohibited in the 3 ashramas and is allowed only in the grahastha ashrama. The grahastha is responsible for producing first quality brahmacharis, vanaprasthas and sannyasis.
So here the grahastha is glorified, but also the responsibilities of the grahastha are clearly articulated by Prabhupada in a very, very direct purport. X21. Na vayam prabhavastam tvam anukartum griheshwari apya ayusha shava kart smena ye chanye gunagridnavaha.
Translation. O queen of the home, we are not able to act like you, nor could we repay you for what you have done, even if we worked for our entire life or even after death. To repay you is not possible, even for those who are admirers of personal qualities. Purport. So much glorification of a woman by her husband indicates that he is henpecked or is talking lightly in joke. Kashyapa meant that householders living with wives enjoy the heavenly blessings of sense enjoyment and at the same time have no fear of going down to hell. The man is the renounced order of life and has no wife and may be driven by sex desire to seek another woman or another's wife and thus go to hell. In other words, the so-called man of the renounced order who has left his house and wife goes to hell if we again desire sexual pleasure, knowingly or unknowingly. In that way, the householders are on the side of safety. Therefore, husbands as a class cannot repay their debt to women either in this life or in the next. Even if they engage themselves in repaying the women throughout the whole lives, it is still not possible. Not all husbands are as able to appreciate the good quality of their wives. But even though one is able to appreciate these qualities, it is still not possible to repay the debt to the wife. Such extraordinary praises by a husband for his wife are certainly in the mode of joking.
Hare Krishna. So again, they are very, very hard-hitting purport by Prabhupada, where he is calling Kashyapa Muni a henpecked husband. But also is kind of elaborating in his purport how the Grihastha ashram is a safety net. The Varnashrama system itself is a safety net for all of us in the society. So if we actually follow the Varnashrama system in principle and as per its word, as per its purpose, as it's been laid out, we are all definitely going to be progressing in spiritual advancement. Text 22. Athapi kamam etam te prajatyai karavanya alam yatha mam nati rochanti muhurtam pratipalaya.
Translation. Even though it is not possible to repay you, I shall satisfy your sex desire immediately for the sake of begetting children. But you must wait for only a few seconds so that others may not reproach me. Purport. The henpecked husband may not be able to repay his wife for all the benefits that he derives from her. But as for begetting children by fulfilling sexual desire, it is not at all difficult for any husband unless he is thoroughly impotent. This is very easy task for a husband under normal conditions. In spite of Kashyapa's being very eager, he requested her to wait for a few seconds so that the others might not reproach him. He explains his position as follows.
Now Kashyapa Muni is changing track. He's now shifting to providing reasons for postponing this union because he sees that this time is not auspicious. And it's sunset, it's the time when the ghosts are going to be walking around. So it's not ideal for begetting children. He identifies the reason and he says that I'll satisfy your desire because it's for the sake of begetting children. But please, let's wait for some time. Okay. And he then goes on to explain that also why. So he's explaining why we need to postpone. Text 23. Esha ghoratama vela ghoranam ghoradarshana charanti yashyam bhutani bhuteshanucharaniha.
Translation. This particular time is most inauspicious because at this time the horrible looking ghosts and constant companions of the Lord of the Ghosts are visible. Purport. Kashyapa has already told his wife Diti to wait for a while, and now he warns her that failure to consider the particular time will result in punishment from the ghosts and evil spirits who move during this time along with their master Lord Rudra.
So this is Ghoratama Vela. So most horrible period. And Ghoranam Ghora Darshana. Horrible looking creatures, Bhutani, ghosts, they move around. Right? And they are the constant companions of the Lord. Who is the Lord? Lord Rudra. So he continues to give more explanations and reasons why we need to postpone the union. Etasyam sadri sandhyayam Bhagavan bhuta bhavanah parito bhuta parshadbhir vrishenatati bhutarat.
Translation. Lord Shiva, the king of the ghosts, sitting on the back of his bull carrier, travels at this time accompanied by ghosts who follow him for their welfare. Purport. Lord Shiva Rudra is the king of the ghosts. Ghostly characters worship Lord Shiva to be gradually guided towards a path of self-realization. Mayavadi philosophers are mostly worshippers of Lord Shiva, and Sripada Shankaracharya is considered to be the incarnation of Lord Shiva for preaching godlessness to the Mayavadi philosophers. Ghosts are bereft of a physical body because of their grievously sinful acts such as suicide. The last resort of the ghostly characters in human society is to take shelter of suicide, either material or spiritual. Material suicide causes loss of physical body, and spiritual suicide causes loss of the individual identity. Mayavadi philosophers desire to lose their individuality and merge into the impersonal spiritual Brahmajyoti existence. Lord Shiva, being very kind to the ghosts, sees that although they are condemned, they get physical bodies. He places them in the wombs of women who indulge in sexual intercourse regardless of the restrictions on time and circumstance. Kashyapa wanted to impress this fact upon Diti so that she might wait for a while.
Hare Krishna. So here again we are seeing how we as jivas are moving from one yoni to another yoni when taking birth, and how we are assigned also a particular body is given over here. And so he says Lord Shiva is very kind to the ghosts, and although they are condemned, he sees to it that they get physical bodies. And it is through such inauspicious union, these provide the opportunities for these ghosts to actually get a physical body and provide them a chance to get back to Godhead. But again, that's the primary purpose there. You see that. We continue. Smashana chakra niladhuli dhumra vikirna vidyot jata jatakal kalapah asmavaguntha malavrupma deho devastribihi pashyati devaraste.
Translation. Lord Shiva's body is reddish and he is unstained, but he is covered with ashes. His hair is dusty from the whirlwind dust of the burning crematorium. He is the younger brother of your husband, and he sees with his 3 eyes. Highlighted.
Just read the highlighted.
Purport. Since he is almost like Lord Vishnu, Shiva can see past, present, and future. He is unstained by material contamination. Kashyapa took him as his younger brother because the younger sister of Diti, Kashyapa's wife, was married to Lord Shiva. Diti might argue that they would enjoy sex life in the private place, but Kashyapa reminded her that Lord Shiva has 3 eyes called the sun, moon, and fire, and one cannot escape his vigilance any more than one can escape Vishnu.
Hare Krishna. So here, Kashyapa Muni is telling that Lord Shiva is Diti's brother-in-law, right? Because the Shiva married, whom did Shiva marry? Shiva married Diti's youngest sister, who was married to Lord Shiva. And because he's got 3 eyes, he can see everything. So if we do indulge in something that is forbidden, it cannot escape him. So let's not be under the false impression that he will not notice what is happening. Next verse. Nayasya loke swajana parova natyadrito nota kaschid vigarya ayam vratarya charana pavidham ashasmahe jam patak mukta bhogam.
Translation. Lord Shiva regards no one as his relative, yet there is no one who is not connected with him. He does not regard anyone as his favorable or abominable. We respectfully worship the remnants of his footsteps and we vow to accept what is rejected by him. Purport. It is said that amongst all the devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shiva is the greatest. Thus, the remnants of footsteps left by him are accepted by other devotees as Mahaprasada, or great spiritual footstep. The remnants of foodstuff offered to Lord Krishna are called prasada. But when the same prasada is eaten by a great devotee like Lord Shiva, it is called Mahaprasada. People in general worship goddess Durga, the wife of Lord Shiva, for material prosperity. But Lord Shiva engages her in his service without material desire. He simply advises his great wife that of all kinds of worship, the worship of Vishnu is the highest, and greater than this is the worship of a great devotee or anything in relation with Vishnu.
In the verse, we see that Shiva regards no one as relative, he's equal to all. But in the purport, Prabhupada does not spare an opportunity to glorify a devotee. Vaishnava's greatest Vaishnava is Shambhu, Shiva. And he's glorifying Shiva and he's glorifying great devotees. He's saying that the remnants of foodstuffs left by him are accepted by other devotees as Mahaprasada or great spiritual foodstuff. The remnants of foodstuffs offered to Lord Krishna are called prasad. But when the same prasada is eaten by a great devotee like Lord Shiva, it is called Mahaprasada. Hare Krishna. Text 27. Yasyanavadya charitam manishino granantya vidya patalam bibhitsavah nirastasamvyatishayo piyat swayam pishachacharyam acharadgati satam.
Translation. Although no one in the material world is equal to or greater than Lord Shiva, and although his unimpeachable character is followed by great souls to dismantle the mass of nescience, he nevertheless remains as if a devil to give salvation to all the devotees of the Lord. Purport. Lord Shiva's uncivilized, devilish characteristics are never abominable because he teaches the sincere devotees of the Lord how to practice detachment from material enjoyment. Although he always associates with Maya, Durga, he is above the reactionary stage of the three modes of the material nature. And although he is in charge of devilish characters in the mode of ignorance, he is not affected by such association.
So again, here is glorifying Lord Shiva. Prabhupada is glorifying Lord Shiva, but also it's kind of also a cue for us as devotees in this material world path, because we are also in this three modes of material nature. We might not be able to become Lord Shiva, but we have to try to stay unaffected by when we are in these three modes also. How do we stay away from that? By being in that right sadhu sangha, by being in the right association, and by taking shelter under the holy name of the Lord. Text 28. Asanti yasya charitam hi durbhagaah swatman ratasya vidusha samihitam yairvastramalya bharananulepanai shvabhojanam swatmatayopalayvitam.
Translation. Unfortunate foolish persons, not knowing that he is engaged in his own self, laugh at him. Such foolish persons engage in maintaining the body, which is eatable by dogs, with dresses, ornaments, garlands, and ointments. Purport. The imitation Shivas try to follow him by indulging in poison, and thus they are ruined. The real purpose of Lord Shiva is to serve the soul of the soul, Lord Krishna. He refuses to accept such luxurious items himself because they are only meant for Lord Krishna.
Hare Krishna. When I read this purport, Prabhuji's and Mataji's, I was actually reminded of an incident that occurred in my early days of Krishna consciousness. So, which was just initially, and I had gone to a dinner at a friend's place, and he was having alcohol, and then he asked me, why aren't you having? And I told him that, I have now taken up Krishna consciousness, right? And, in Krishna consciousness, we are not supposed to be doing these things. And he mentioned, it was a very interesting thing. He mentioned that, but Shiva, he has bhang pita hai. So he said, Shiva bhang pita hai, charsi hai, and all that. And I actually, at that point of time, I didn't have the point to
Answer.
counter that. But when you're reading this purport, you see Shiva drank poison also. Shiva drank poison also. So, can the imitation Shivas, can they try to do that? So if they drink something that is not exactly poison, they might drink alcohol or liquor, or they might indulge in drugs. But can they actually drink poison like Shiva did and become Nilkant? Right? And can they stay away from luxurious items? They go and they ask Shiva for opulences and for luxuries. But can they stay away from that? Shiva is the ultimate renunciate. He's in this world, right? They say, of course, Krishna shows the highest opulence of renunciation. But after that, it is Shiva. He refuses to accept such luxurious items himself because they are only meant for Krishna. So everything else in this world is for Krishna's enjoyment. We'll continue. Text 29. Brahmadayo yat krita setupala yat karanam vishwamidam cha maya agnyakkariyasya pishachacharya aho vibhumnascharitam vidambanam.
Translation. Demigods like Brahma also follow the religious rites observed by him. He is the controller of the material energy which causes the creation of material world. He is great and therefore his devilish characteristics are simply imitation. Lord Krishna's he is very great and puppet. He is very great, and his renunciation of all material enjoyment is an ideal example of how one should be materially unattached. One should therefore follow in his footsteps and be unattached to matter, not imitate his uncommon acts like drinking poison.
Hare Krishna. So we should be in our limits, we should be in our limits, and we should live in our quota. And here again, he's glorifying Lord Shiva. But more importantly, he's also saying that, that Brahma, even demigods like Brahma follow him. So, and here Kashyapa Muni is again warning Diti and telling that, okay, we need to postpone this union. Please, please. And now it shifts to Maitreya. Maitreya Muni saying in text 30, says, Maitreya Vacha Shaivam Samvidite Bhartra Manamathona Thonmathitendriya Jagraha Vasu Brahmarsher Trishaliva Gatatrapa.
Translation. Maitreya said Diti was thus informed by her husband, but she was pressed by Cupid for sexual satisfaction. She caught hold of the clothing of the great Brahmana sage, just like a shameless public prostitute. Purport. Although very enlightened, Kashyapa, the great sage, became a victim.
Yes. So no matter how much knowledge you have, if you are not taking absolute shelter under Harinam and under the lotus feet of the Lord, we are also bound to become the victim of Maya. This is a perfect example also over here. We've seen many, many other examples. We have heard many, many examples of such things happening. But we need to be always taking shelter under Harinam. We'll now continue. Now we'll be moving to a next section wherein now Diti will also start repenting later. So text 31. Saviditvathavatha bharyayas tam nirbandham vikarmani natvadishtaya rahasi tayatho pavishveshahi.
Translation. Understanding his wife's purpose, he was obliged to perform the forbidden act, and thus, after offering his obeisances unto worshipable fate, he lay with her in a secluded place. Purport. It appears from the talks of Kashyapa with his wife that he was a worshipper of Lord Shiva, and although he knew that Lord Shiva would not be pleased with him for such a forbidden act, he was obliged to act by his wife's desire, and thus he offered his obeisances unto fate. In a similar case, however, when Thakura Haridasa was tempted by a public prostitute at the dead of night, he avoided the allurement because of his perfection in Krishna consciousness. That is the difference between a Krishna conscious person and others. Thakura Haridasa was not born of a Brahmana family, nor was he himself a Brahmana. Yet he could protect himself from such an attack due to being Krishna conscious. Thakura Haridasa used to chant the holy name of the Lord 300,000 times daily.
Hare Krishna. Let us all chant one more time. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Yes. So very clearly over here, it's Prabhupada is calling out the distinction between someone who takes shelter under the feet of the Lord and someone who does not. And over here, the person who is not taking shelter under the feet of the Lord, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is finding an excuse for committing a forbidden act. Right? And he's, of course, as he's saying, he's offering obeisance unto fate and he's proceeding with that. But distinguish that with Haridas Thakura on how he fought with Maya when Maya tried to allure him. Text 32. Atopasprisya salilam pranan ayamavagyatah dhyayan jajapa virajam brahma jyoti sanatanam.
Translation. Therefore, the Brahmana took his bath in the water and controlled his speech by practicing trance, meditating on the eternal effulgence and chanting the holy Gayatri hymns within his mouth. Purport. When a Vedic mantra is chanted within the mouth so that only the chanter can hear, the chanting is called japa. And when such mantras are chanted loudly, it is called kirtana. The Vedic hymn Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare can be chanted both softly to oneself or loudly. Therefore, it is called as Maha Mantra or the great hymn.
Hare Krishna. So here Kashyapa Muni is meditating on the Brahma Jyoti by chanting the Gayatri Mantra within the mouth. And Prabhupada is talking about this, but then he is talking about, immediately takes the opportunity to speak about the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And then he also gives us some guidance about how to chant this mantra. Text 33. Vitistu vridita tena karma vadyena bharata upasangamya viprarsim adho mukhya abhya bhashata.
Translation. O son of the Bharata family, Diti, after this, went nearer to her husband, her face lowered because of her faulty action. She spoke as follows.
So here Diti is again, now she's ashamed, she's repenting. So with her face down, typically when you do something wrong, you lower your face and then you go and ask for forgiveness. So she's speaking now. Ditiruvacha name garbham imam brahman bhutanam rishabho avadhit rudra patirhi bhutanam yasya karavam amhasam.
Translation. The beautiful Diti said, "My dear Brahmana, kindly see that my embryo is not killed by Lord Shiva, the Lord of all living entities, because of the great offense I have committed against him." Purport. Lord Shiva has two popular names, Rudra and Ashutosha. He is very prone to anger as well as quickly pacified.
Yeah. So Diti knows that yes, Rudra will be angry. Shiva will be angry, but Shiva is also someone whom you can quickly pacify. So she's keeping that in the background and saying that, okay, let me go and try and pacify and see, use my husband to pacify Rudra. Text 35. Namo Rudraya Mahate Deva Yograya Midushe Shivaya Nashta Dandaya Dhrita Dandaya Manyave.
Translation. Let me offer my obeisances unto the angry Lord Shiva, who is simultaneously the very ferocious great demigod and the fulfiller of all material desires. He is all auspicious and forgiving, but his anger can be immediately moved him to chastise.
Yeah. So here again, she's again, using this, what she knows about Lord Shiva to offer obeisances unto Lord Shiva. Let's continue. Text 36. Sanha prasidhatam datam bamo Bhagavan urvanugraha vyadhasyapya anukampyanam Srinam deva sati patihi.
Translation. Let him be pleased with us, since he is my brother-in-law, the husband of my sister Sati. He is also the worshipable Lord of all women. He is a personality of all opulences, and he can show mercy towards women who are excused even by the uncivilized hunters.
So she's using all the options that are related. So that Shiva is Ashutosha, but then Shiva is also the husband of my sister Sati. So, and that he's worshipable Lord of all women. So, and he's the personality of all opulences, and therefore he will excuse me. Text 37 to 43, we see Kashyapa's predictions now. Kashyapa will now predict, and then Diti will request him also. So, again, Maitreya Muni will start speaking. Maitreya says, Maitreya Uvacha Sargasya Shisham Lokyam Ashasanam Pravepatim Nivritta Sandhya Niyamo Bharyam Aha Prajapatihi.
Translation. Maitreya said, the great sage Kashyapa thus addressed his wife, who was trembling because of fear that her husband was offended. She understood that he has been dissuaded from his daily duties of offering evening prayers, yet she desired the welfare of her children in the world.
Like any mother would, desire the welfare of the children, she now fears for the child in her womb, and therefore she is very afraid. Kashyapuvacha aprayatyadatmanaste doshan mohurtikaduta mannideshati charena devanam chati helanat.
Translation. The learned Kashyapa said, because of your minds being polluted, because of defilement of the particular time, because of your negligence of my directions, and because of you are being apathetic to the demigods, everything was inauspicious. Purport. The conditions for having good progeny in society are that the husband should be disciplined in religious and regulative principles, and the wife should be faithful to the husband. According to Vedic society, there is suitable auspicious time for sex life, which is called the time for Garbhadana. A Brahmana's son is not always a Brahmana. Personalities like Ravana and Hiranyakashipu were actually born of Brahmanas, but they were not accepted as Brahmanas because their fathers did not follow the regulative principles for their birth. Such children are called demons or Rakshasas.
Hare Krishna. Where Prabhupada is emphasizing on the importance of the Garbhadana Samskara, that the way the Garbhadana Samskara needs to be done and at what time it's done, so that to get good progeny. And he also emphasizes that every person is not necessarily, if you're just born as a Brahmana's family, you don't become a Brahmana. And there are examples. So he takes the example of Ravana and Hiranyakashipu, who were born in Brahmana families but were demoniac and became Rakshasas. We move to the next verse. Text 39. Bhavishyattas tavam bhadrav abhadre jatha radhamau lokan sapalam strim chandi muhur akranda yishyatah.
Translation. O haughty one, you will have two contemptuous sons born of your condemned womb. Unlucky woman, they will cause constant lamentation to all the three worlds.
Hare Krishna. So here in the purport, Prabhupada is talking about the contemptuous sons that are born of the condemned wombs. So if Matajis and Prabhujis, you remember from the Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 1, verse 40, Arjuna is outlining the conditions on why he should not pick up the bow and fight against his brothers and his relatives. And he gives this as one of the example reasons. He says that Varna Shankaras will be born if everybody dies and all that. The woman will be widowed and Varna Shankaras will be there, which is not good. And here similarly, Kashyapa Muni is chastising Diti and saying that, you will have, he's predicting here, he's saying you will have two contemptuous sons. Who are the two contemptuous sons? Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. And they will be born of your condemned womb. And they will cause constant lamentation to all the three worlds. So now he'll continue. Praninam hanyamananam dinanam akritagasam strinam nigrahya mananam kopiteshu mahatmasu.
Translation. They will kill poor, faultless living entities, torture women, and enrage their great souls. Purport. Where there are women and meat, there must be liquor and sex indulgence.
Yes. So this will be there. And when demoniac people come here in contact with these irreligious indulgences, then obviously hell breaks loose. They end up killing people, killing innocent people and torturing people. And that's what happens when Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu come in this world. Text 41. Tada Vishveshwara Krudo Bhagavan Loka Bhavana Hanishyatya Avitiryaso Yathadrin Shata Parvadrek.
Translation. At that time, the Lord of the universe, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the well-wisher of all living entities, will descend and kill them, just as Indra smashes the mountains with his thunderbolts.
Yeah. So again, here in this purport, Prabhupada is, citing Bhagavad Gita, Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha duskritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. So the Lord will appear in this universe to save his devotees and kill the miscreants. So I'll continue, just move ahead in the interest of time. We are almost at the end of the chapter, Prabhuji and Matajis. Text 42. Ditiru vacha vadam bhagavata sakshat suna vibhodara bahuna ashase putrayor mahyam makrudhat brahmanad prabho.
Translation. Diti said, it is very good that my sons will be magnanimously killed by the arms of the personality of Godhead with his Sudarshana weapon. O my husband, may they never be killed by the wrath of the Brahmana devotees.
So the offense of hurting Brahmanas is huge, right? And the Brahmanas can actually, can destroy anybody just by their anger. So he says, Prabhupada says, she's thought that her sons might be killed by the wrath of Brahmanas, and she feared that. And the Lord does not appear when the Brahmanas become angry at someone, because the wrath of the Brahmana is sufficient to destroy that person. But he certainly appears, however, when his devotee becomes simply sorry. And the devotee of the Lord never prays to the Lord to appear for the sake of the troubles of the miscreants cause him. So look at the mindset of the devotee. Even though he's undergoing so much of problem and trouble, he is willing to undergo that trouble, and he's not asking the Lord also for anything, but the Lord simply out of his anxiousness to give protection to the devotee, he appears. And Diti says it's very good that my sons don't get killed by the Brahmana, but instead by the Sudarshana weapon of the Lord. Text 43. Na brahmadanda dabdhasya na bhuta bhayadasya cha narakaschanugrihणन्ति yam yam yonim asau gatah.
Translation. A person who is condemned by a Brahmana or is always fearful to other living entities is not favored either by those who are already in hell or by those in the species in which he is born.
Prabhupada in the purport gives an example of such species. He says a dog, because the dogs, if you look at it, when a dog sees another dog, the dogs start barking. So they show no sympathy to their contemporaries also. Next two shlokas. Kashyapa uvacha krita shokanutapena sadya pratyavamarshanaat bhagavatyaurumanacha bhave mayapi chadarat putrasyaiva cha putranam bhavitaika shatam pantah kasyanti yadyasha shuddham bhagavadyasa yashasa samam.
Translation. The learned Kashyapa said, because of your lamentation, penitence, and proper deliberation, and also because of your unflinching faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and your adoration for Lord Shiva and me, one of the sons, Prahalada, of your son Hiranyakashipu, will be an approved devotee of the Lord, and his fame will be broadcast equally with that of the personality of Godhead.
Hare Krishna. So there is hope for all of us, that when we do something wrong, we should lament, we should show repentance, we should do tapasya, properly deliberate over it, and we need to have unflinching faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, and then that will help us. So to overcome this. So here Kashyapa is saying, okay, you have a chance here, okay, and he says that your grandson Prahalada will be an approved devotee of the Lord. Now, from text 46 to text 50, Kashyapa speaks about Diti's would-be grandson Prahalada, and few qualities of Prahalada are there. They are very sweet verses and also very sweet purports. And we'll just go through these quickly. It's very sweet because it gives us a bit of a flavor of what is to come later on in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Text 46. Yogairhemeva durvarnam bhava yashyanti sadavaha nirvairadir adibhir atmanam yachilam anuvartitam.
Translation. In order to follow in his footsteps, saintly persons will try to emulate his character by practicing freedom from animosity, just as the purifying processes rectify gold of inferior quality. Purport. In the conditional state, every living being is envious of another living being, but in the liberated state, there is an absence of animosity. Prahalada Maharaj was tortured by his father for so many years, yet after death of his father, he prayed for his father's liberation by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He never cursed any of the persons who engaged in torturing him at the instigation of his father.
Hare Krishna. Prahlad Maharaj ki jai.
Jai.
Prabhujis and Matajis, I hope you are making your reflections here. Prahlad Maharaj is setting very, very high standards, even though he was tortured. The word torture is there, okay? We, in our lives, we undergo difficulties. Even if somebody, just says no to us, we immediately react in such a very, very strong way. But here, the devotee is there who's tortured in so many ways, yet he's praying for his father's liberation by Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he never cursed any person. Text 47. Yat prasadadidam vishvam prasidati yadatmakam saswadrik bhagavan yasya toshyate ananya drisha.
Translation. Everyone will be pleased with him because the personality of Godhead, the supreme controller of the universe, is always satisfied with a devotee who does not wish for anything beyond him. Purport.
Would be grandson.
Would be liked, Prahlad Maharaj would be liked by everyone, even by the enemies of his father, because he would have no other vision besides the supreme personality of Godhead. A pure devotee of the Lord sees the presence of his worshipable Lord everywhere.
Yeah. Pure devotee sees the Lord everywhere. In situations of joy, in situations of distress, also he sees the Lord. He becomes equanimous. He's seeing that everywhere, wherever he sees, everywhere it's only the Lord for him. We continue in text 48. Savai Mahabhagavato Mahatma Mahanubhavo Mahatam Mahishta Pravriddha Bhaktya Anubhavitashaye Niveshya Vaikuntamimam Vithasyati.
Translation. That topmost devotee of the Lord will have expanded intelligence and expanded influence and will be the greatest of the great souls. Due to mature devotional service, he will certainly be situated in transcendental ecstasy and will enter the spiritual sky after quitting this material world. Purport. Sthai Bhava, Anubhava and Mahabhava. Continual perfect love of Godhead is called Sthai Bhava. And when it is performed in a particular type of transcendental relationship is called Anubhava. But the stage is Mahabhava is visible amongst the personal pressure potencies of the Lord. Such meditation is still more conveniently performed by chanting and hearing the holy name of the Lord. This is especially recommended in this age of Kali.
I was reading from the Bhakti Vinoda Institute. There was a paragraph on the Chaitanya Charitamrita. I think they were Bhakti Vinoda Thakura's reflection on this, and he says that he compares this Mahabhava to basically it's like it's like you get sugar cane. From sugar cane you get the sugar cane juice. From sugar cane juice you get the sugar, and that sugar then you get some kind of candy or whatever, and then finally it's ultimate sweet, right? And that's the stage, ultimate stage that you want to get to, is that Mahabhava stage you want to get to. And here again, glorification of Prahlad Maharaja, but also what are the qualities that he'll be having. When I was reading this, it makes us more and more, we want to eagerly waiting to get to reading more about Prahlad Maharaja also. Text 49. Alampatah Shiladharo Gunakaro Hrishtaha Parardhya Vyatito Dukiteshu Abhuta Shatru Jagata Shokaharta Naidagikam Tapamivodurajaha.
Translation. He will be in a virtuously qualified reservoir of all good qualities. He will be jolly and happy in others' happiness, distressed in others' distress, and will have no enemies. He will be the destroyer of the lamentation of all the universes, like the pleasant moon after the summer sun. Purport. Prahlad Maharaja had all the good qualities humanly possible, and he was endowed with all good qualities. That is the sign of a pure devotee. The most important characteristic of a pure devotee is that he is not lampata or licentious. And another quality is that he is always eager to imitate the miseries of suffering humanity. The most obnoxious misery of a living entity is this forgetfulness of Krishna. A pure devotee, therefore, always tries to evoke everyone's Krishna consciousness. This is the panacea of all miseries.
Hare Krishna. So here the qualities of a pure devotee are being called out by comparing that to Prahlad Maharaj. The most important characteristics, but also the most obnoxious misery of a living entity is also called out by Prabhupada. Two more verses to go. Antarbahishchamalabjanetram swapurushe chanugrihata rupam Pautrastava Shri Lalana Lalamnam Lalamam Drashta Swarat Kundalamanditanam.
Translation. Your grandson will be able to see inside and outside the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose wife is the beautiful goddess of fortune. The Lord can assume the form desired by the devotee, and his face is always beautifully decorated with earrings. Purport. This direct vision is possible only for one who is highly elevated in Krishna consciousness, for the Lord is not possible to see with material eyes. A devotee does not imagine something whimsical about the form of the Lord, nor does he ever think that the Lord is impersonal and assume a form desired by the non-devotee.
Hare Krishna. So the Prahlad Maharaj is saying we'll see the Lord directly, and direct vision is not possible with material eyes. You need to have spiritual eyes, and for that you need the Lord's mercy. But before that, as we read in the previous verse, there were some glorious qualities of Prahlad. I didn't complete them fully, but I'll just call them out. He was Alampataha, which is virtuous. He was qualified, that is Shiladharaha. He was a reservoir of all good qualities, Guna Akaraha. He was joyful in others' happiness, Rishta Para Radhya. He was distressed in others' sufferings. So when others were suffering, he was suffering himself. Vyatita Dukiteshu. He was without enemies, Abhuta Shatru, and destroyer of lamentation of the universe, Jagata Shoka Harta. So these qualities, was other glorious qualities of Prahlad, are the ones that actually enable him to see this direct vision of the Lord. Now, hearing this, Diti, of course, is very satisfied, and Maitreya Muni now will conclude this chapter with his verse. He'll say, Maitreya Vacha Shrutva Bhagavatam Pautram Amodata Ditir Brisham Putrayoscha Vadam Krishnat Viditvasin Mahamanaha.
Translation. The sage Maitreya said, hearing that her grandson would be a great devotee and that her sons would be killed by Krishna, Diti was highly pleased in mind. Being killed by the Supreme Personality of a Godhead is a great fortune. Since the Lord is absolute, his acts of violence and non-violence are both on the absolute platform. There is no difference in such acts of the Lord. A demon killed by him attains the same result as one who attains liberation after many, many births of penance and austerity.
Hare Krishna. That doesn't mean we should all aspire to become demons. Demons come also because that is the God's larger plan over there. Of course, what the path we should take is specified, but more importantly, we need to remember that the Lord's act is always absolute. His acts of violence and non-violence are both on the absolute platform. There is no difference in such acts of the Lord. When we are faced with difficulties and when we are faced with moments of happiness also, we should also be seeing both with the same vision. We should see the difficult times as the mercy of the Lord, but also not get out of bounds or out of control when things are good, which are equally still the mercy of the Lord also. With that, we come to the end of this chapter. Thus end the Bhakti-Vedanta purports of the third canto, 14th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Pregnancy of Diti in the Evening. Just to summarize, so what did we see today, Prabhujis and Matajis? We saw, we started off with, Vidura still being very curious. So the qualities of the devotee is curious and he's having Shraddha, and he inquires about Nilavaraha. And then Maitreya goes on to congratulate Vidura, glorifying the qualities of the devotee. And then the scene shifts to Diti, and Diti approaches Kashyapa Muni for union, and she cites the reasons why she wants to have the union to beget the child. And Kashyapa Muni then glorifies his wife, but then also Kashyapa Muni highlights the reasons for why we should not have the union, why we need to postpone it, because the time is inauspicious. And however, they have the union, and post that, Diti is repentant, and Diti goes back to Kashyapa Muni feeling fearful that, look here, I'm fearing for the child in my womb. You need to save me. Shiva is also very merciful. He's angry, but he's merciful. But there are reasons we can do something to please Shiva, so that Shiva will save this child. And then Kashyapa says, okay, and he makes a prediction that in your womb, 2 demons will take birth, Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu. They will cause lamentation and trouble to the entire 3 worlds. And Diti requests, of course, that look here, these demons should not get killed by the Brahmanas' wrath. If they are going to be causing so much of lamentation and distress to everybody, they should not be killed by the Brahmanas' wrath. And Kashyapa Muni says, that will not happen. They will die because the Supreme Personality of Godhead will appear on this world, on the planet, and he will liberate them with his Sudarshana weapon. And that makes Diti very happy also. But not only that, Kashyapa Muni tells about Diti's grandsons. Those are the last 6 verses of the chapter, wherein he talks about great Prahlad Maharaja, and he shares a glimpse about Prahlad Maharaja's glorious qualities that we will later on read in the Srimad Bhagavatam. That brings us to the end of this chapter. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Prabhuji and
Guruji. Dandat Pranam. Anandram Charanya Mataji. Wonderful family. I liked both of you sitting and reciting the shlokas, purports, and translations. Wonderfully done, and a very important chapter for all the Grihasthas, as you mentioned, Anandram Prabhu. Everybody should go back and reread the purports again and underline the points. Thank you very much, Guruji, for your wonderful service.
Thank you, Prabhu. The purports are sometimes when you read it the first time, Prabhu, you feel that it's a bit strong.
Yes.
Then you need to actually, you have to allow it to sink in, Prabhu.
Yes.
That's when you realize that what a great service Prabhupada has done for
Yes.
us by actually opening up our eyes also.
Yes, Prabhu.
Any Prabhuji and Mataji, any reflections, Prabhu? Any
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Hare Krishna Mataji. Anandram Prabhuji. Hare Krishna Mataji. Dandavat Pranam. Such a wonderful presentation by you both, Prabhuji and Mataji. No words. It's really wonderful. Okay. In fact, like we just take it and listen again, so that, like as you mentioned, especially for Grihasthas, so that like we come back on the track, Prabhuji and Mataji. I just have only one comment, Prabhuji. Maybe question as well. See, okay, he's a Prajapati, Prabhu. Okay, he's not an ordinary person. He's a Prajapati. Okay, so question is, so is clear that like there is some weakness on Prajapati at that Prajapati level as well, Prabhu? That I am not digesting, Prabhu. Okay.
But that in one of the purports he mentions, it appears that he is a worshipper of Shiva.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you are not taking shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, then that Maya is bound to come in. Somewhere it will find a way to come inside and impact you, Prabhu. So the only way is shelter under the lotus feet of the Lord.
So that again proves like how fortunate we are, Prabhu. Yeah, at least we know that we have to surrender.
That is the only way, and we have got so many examples also, Prabhu. He gives the example of Vishwamitra, then also he gives the example of Haridas Thakura, and he calls out, you can see the stark difference. The situation that both of them faced was perhaps the same. But one person was taking shelter of the holy name, the other person was aspiring for, liberation and becoming one with the Brahmajyoti.
Okay, Prabhu. Got it, Prabhu. Got the difference now. So,
Prabhuji, Prasad Prabhu, one more, if you want, if I can, Anandram Prabhu, to add one more thing. Prabhuji, this is also will of the Lord. So, Prabhuji, Jaya Vijaya has to be born as Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu, and it has to be done. And Kashyap Muni and Diti should be the cause of it, and this has to happen. So the influence of Maya and Kashyap Muni also is the will of the Lord. Otherwise they won't be born and they will be having.
Yeah.
So
I was thinking whether it is a Leela versus the weakness or something like that, Prabhu.
So,
Maybe
so-
both are true.
Yes,
both
yes,
are true.
both you
Leela
have to
and
take.
as well as
Both you have to
both.
take.
Thank you, Praveen Prabhu, for bringing that up. Actually, the devotees of the Lord also, they are more than happy to put themselves in a very awkward situation to glorify the Lord.
Yes, good.
Thank you,
And
Prabhu.
he is able to predict even his grandchild, even after that, immediately on the same day. So such a knowledgeable person he is. So I think Leela, and as well as we have to consider it as a Leela and as well as weakness. Through that weakness, like maybe Maya will enter. Both we have to accept. Thank you very much, Anandram Prabhuji and Mataji, and thank you very much, Praveen Prabhuji. Yeah, thank you. Haribol.
Haribol, Prabhu. Any other reflections, Prabhujis and Matajis?
Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Excellent Mangal Harati. Excellent class, Prabhuji.
Thank
We
you.
have
Thank
to
you.
go through it after the class. We have to read once again.
Yes,
Such a wonderful class. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Mataji.
Mataji.
This is a very important chapter for all Grihasthas, Mataji.
The way you both are reading slokas are very good.
Yeah.
Have
Prabhuji
to
and
practice.
Mataji, you are maintaining the meter. That's very nice. I think Gaurang Darshan Prabhu maintains the meter, and you are maintaining the meter. Very, very nice to hear the rhythm.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam, Prabhu.
Prabhuji, very nice, bro. Really inspired. Lot of inspiration came after you both reciting slokas together, and the way the class is going on. It was really good. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Lot of inspiration. And only my question is like the same question which we already discussed about the will of the Lord versus the. I think can we see it as completely exclusively will of Lord, because Kashyapa Muni he's not an ordinary soul. No, he's elevated, and he's a lot of he always spends time in meditation and all, and also Diti also she serves her husband faithfully. So can I see this as entirely Krishna's plan without any like from their side contribution? I mean, is it wrong thinking like that? Because my perspective is like completely this is Krishna's plan only. They are just instruments in his hands. Is it right, or still we have to take some element of material desire from Diti's side?
So free. I will try to answer, Prabhu. I'll also request the other senior devotees to also chime in, Praveen Prabhu and Prasad Prabhu also, and other senior devotees. The free will is always there, Prabhu. So every jiva is having the free will, and that is why we are in this material quarantine world. We are all here, but at the same time, the Lord has a plan for us, all of us, to bring us back. So it is intentionally also that the Lord is putting us into this quarantine. It's like, we put in a person into a jail so that that person gets reformed. Here the Lord is he knows everything. He knows past, present, and future. Of course, so he knows also how the jiva is going to exercise that free will. It's not that the Lord isn't aware of that, but the jiva is allowed to exercise that free will, Prabhu. So it is absolutely the will of the Lord. That is why we are here. But while we are here in this material world, we are exercising our will, but we don't know. That's the only reason. I think that's the difference, is that we can't remember. We don't remember that past, present, or the future. We know the present, but we don't know the past or the future. So we go about exercising our free will. But of course, the Lord knows everything. That is my take on it, Prabhu. But Praveen Prabhu, please add, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I think we should go by Srila Prabhupada purports, because Prabhupada is very knowledgeable, and he specifically mentioned comparisons between other saints and Kashyapa Muni. So our interpretations will be very, very low in the priority. I think we should just go by Prabhupada purports, saying that yes, he could have said very strongly no, but he didn't. So there is an opportunity that he could have said. That is the first priority purport we should understand, Prabhuji. That's what I think.
But if Krishna's plan is otherwise, if Krishna's plan is otherwise, only he wants to get a place to Jaya and Vijaya to come.
Yeah, that is also there, Prabhuji. That is also there. But I think that is secondary part. But first part, Prabhupada wants us to all understand is that what to do, what not to do, and how to behave as a Grihastha, and how Kashyapa Muni could have done better, in terms of saying no to Diti. That is the first priority point we really have to understand, Prabhuji.
Okay.
And that's why Prabhupada is also very strong in his purports. He's unequivocal. So
Yes.
he does not mince any words there,
Yes.
and that is why there he's clearly saying Kashyapa Muni is henpecked. So he's
Yes.
not mixing any words there.
Yes, Prabhu, that is correct.
Yeah, I understood now, Prabhu. Thank you very much. Because the idea is to give the direction to jivas like us,
Yes.
to give. Don't put blame on this every Krishna's plan. Suppose if you go and do
Yes.
the regulative principles, and tomorrow you say that this is Krishna's plan. Why did you play? Why did you break this regulative principle? No, this is not me. This is Krishna's plan. Now we can escape like that.
Yes, Prabhu.
So very good explanation. I got it. I got what I want from it. And one more reflection I just want to, because in the beginning of the class you were telling that if each and everybody who is hearing the class should give some reflection, some realization. So only one thing I think I want to share here is when you are nicely explaining about faithful and inquisitiveness, so desire is inside and the blame is attributed outside. So this point I liked very much. So this happened to me for many times, what we see, what we want to see is what we see. What we see is what we want. So this is very nice, Prabhuji. Yeah, many times we have to question, introspect ourselves, whether we are thinking in a right line or not. So some desire will be there, hidden desire, hidden agenda will be there inside us. And we want to get it for outside realization, saying that the blame, we will blame somebody, blame is... we blame from outside. So this is very nice introspection and take home from me. We can always introspect ourselves whether we are really meaning it or not. So sometimes we'll hide something inside and we'll give the blame to others. So this is very good point we discussed today. That's very take home from me. Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu, for reminding that as human beings, I think we have been given that that intelligence. I think that distinguishes us from animals that only react. They are either in fight or flight mode. And as human beings, we have that intelligence to reflect and to comprehend things. And we need to exercise that.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, if there are no other questions, Prabhu, then we can close the call, Prabhu.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Dhanavad pranam. Vancha kalptarabhyascha kripasya
Thank you, Prabhuji and Mataji. Wonderful class. Hare Krishna. Dhanavad pranam.
Anandram Prabhuji ki jai.
Hare
Anandram Prabhuji ki jai.